Hello, lockdown. Let's try again. Hello, lockdown diaries day 6. Back on daily daycare, so I can't get down to the unit. I've just dug this out of the garage. I was thinking, what can I talk about today? And I went in the garage and I found the knife that I bought in Kashgar in China. And this was a knife that, from having bought it, I carried it everywhere I went. I would sleep with it in the sleeping bag or whatever, in my tank bag. I took it across America and had it there for protection against bears and other things. And thinking back, I was so stupid, really, to think that a knife could keep me safe on the road. And I think safety on the road is probably a really good hot topic for people who are considering a trip of any kind, really, because as soon as you say you're going out your comfort zone to other people, they're going to say, well, are you going to be safe? What if somebody tries to harm you or do this or do that? And it's very difficult to have an answer to how you are going to keep yourself safe certainly when you're out there on your own. I think there is a certain vulnerability of a solo traveller. I think it's slightly mitigated when there's a group of you, but I don't think that makes a group of people any safer in a way than a single traveller, because the beauty of being out there on your own is you are completely responsible for your own actions and protection, and I think it really forces you to engage with the environment around you and really assess whether it's safe or secure or not. And I think it comes back to that age-old art of trusting your gut, trusting your instinct. I think it's certainly the best weapon you've got. I mean, we can load ourselves up with knives, and in America you meet people who are travelling with firearms, and you think, if you've got to the point where you need a firearm or a knife to get yourself out of trouble, you're probably too far gone down the road of trouble. And so I think really, you've just got to trust your instinct. Learn to listen to your senses, really, because I think that's the best gauge. And that's not to say you don't trust people. I think you've always got to trust people. You'll never get anywhere on your travels without trusting people, because by far and away the vast majority of people only have good intent rather than a bad intent. But I think you've got to be, you've always got to be alert to the possibility that somebody's not going to do right by you, and whether that's harm or just trick you, you've got to be one step ahead of that. And so before you find yourself down a dark alley with a group of people you didn't wish to, you've got to think slightly further back, a few steps back. Do these guys feel right? Does this feel right? And if you don't feel right, make your excuses and leave. You will always upset somebody along the way by maybe turning down a genuine offer of help. But if your gut's saying no, that's all. You can't betray what your instinct or gut says. So, we can take all the knives we want in the world, but ultimately, the head is the best defence against issues on the road. I think, we talk about solo female travellers and people are worried about them, but I think again, I think if you've got your wits about you and you're alert, the risk or the chance of getting into a physical confrontation are minimal. There's practical precautions. If you're camping wild, try and do it so that nobody's seen where you're setting up and where you've gone. I think that's a precaution. What else I got? Equally, if you're travelling through a foreign land and there's protests or riots in a particular place, then stay clear of them. When I went into Bangkok, there was a lot of protests, violent protests. I think there were protesters being shot in a certain area of Bangkok, and it was all over the news. And it was stay away from Bangkok because it's very dangerous. But actually, if you didn't go anywhere near that little quadrant of trouble, you wouldn't know there was any trouble anywhere in the world, anywhere in the city. But yeah, if you watched the BBC News, World News, Bangkok wasn't safe. And it was pretty much the same with Pakistan. Pakistan was all over the news, Taliban surging. But if you didn't go into the mountain regions where they were, you were kind of no problem at all. It was just another country. I think people, and I've seen it on comments to the video of my Sydney-London trip, I think there's an assumption that a country of a different faith to you is going to give you trouble, and I think generally that's people who think if you're going through an Islamic country you're going to get trouble. But I think if you're respectful and you don't go there to cause trouble, I think trouble seldom finds you. And in fairness, the Islamic countries are incredibly hospitable. I never had any issue in Indonesia, Pakistan, any of those countries, I think people were just people, and I think you have to try and remember that people are just people, and most people in the world are just trying to do their best by their family and their friends, and get on with life and be prosperous. So I think, you know, it's struggling a fine line between having faith in the goodness of people, but also knowing when somebody might not have your best intentions at heart. I think ultimately though, the biggest risk for a motorcycle trip is an accident on the road, having a bad vehicle accident. You know, you're riding on foreign roads in a foreign land. You've got so much to think about, so much going on, and I think the real risk is having a bad road accident, and I think that's always going to be the biggest risk over the actual personal harm by another individual. I think it's always that bus that you hit or that car that takes you out that's going to get you. And all I would say to that is, riding at night is always hazardous. Riding when you're tired is always hazardous, and riding when you're trying to beat a deadline or get to a place for a particular time is the time when you're going to have an accident. And then it comes back to what we talked about the other day about planning. You know, if you've got a really tight schedule in place and you need to get to that certain spot that night because you booked a hotel or whatever, and you're still 5 hours away, but it's already 7 o'clock at night, and you've got, so you think, I'm going to ride till midnight. Well, then you're going to have an accident eventually because you can't keep that up. So I think flexibility in your plan really allows you to avoid those times when you're going to have an accident. I mean, the only time I've had a crash on a overseas bike trip was in Germany, trying to get to somebody's house late at night, because that's a challenge I'd set myself. And next minute I know, as I was stopping to check the map, I hit the curb and bike went down on its side. And just because I was in too much haste, too much hurry, too frantic, and that's it. So safety on the road, it's very important to be aware of it, but not let it deter you from your trip. And equally, let your sixth sense, gut instinct develop, and learn to trust it, because generally, I'd say 9 out of 10 times, if not more, it's always right. It is always right. So that's it. I hope that was some use. I'm going to do a video tomorrow on the people and places of India. India was a big challenge for me. It's a testing place to travel, but it comes with great reward equally. So tomorrow I'm just going to talk about India, show some photos, maybe try and get a bit of video in there, let's see what happens. All right, take it easy. Bye.